also an interactive experience where we're not necessarily getting into the one-on-one in specifics of someone's diagnosis, if that's going on. But what we are doing is allowing questions and having an experience that we can all learn from one another. It's not to say that Paula and I are the experts in the room. And in fact, many times that we've been together, we've also learned stuff from you all. So as we go through the information, I will be monitoring the chat. There's a couple different ways that you can ask the questions. The easiest way is, of course, to click down at the bottom of your screen and get into the chat feature on the right-hand side and just type your question. I will answer all of them. I may not answer them all correctly or at this exact moment, but we are committed to getting you the answers that you might need. Just a reminder, one more time, we don't tackle individual questions about something going on in the cancering journey with somebody specifically, but what we can do is answer that later on offline and put you in touch with Paula. So we'll give you all of that information at the end. That said, one of my very favorite co-hosts, this is Paula Weinberg, and she is from Healthspan Nutrition and a oncology nutritionist. This is how we get really great research-based information. And I'm so looking forward to going through and learning a little bit more about decoding the nutrition label. Welcome, Paula, and welcome everybody else.
Hello, thanks, Stacy. It's been a while since we've been together on one of these, and I'm excited to be back. We forged the initial path way back when, and here we are. So we're going to dive right in. Kelly, thank you so much for your response. I see that you did, figure out your sound and all of that, and I'm glad you had fun in the snow. So we are going to get started. Let me share my screen. So today we're going to be talking nutrition labels. And the first thing I want to put out there is that some of the best and healthiest foods out there for us don't really come with a label, right? So once we're holding a package or a bag of some kind or a box that contains food, it's going to have to be labeled. But again, a lot of the best foods for us, when you pick up an avocado or an apple or a bunch of, a fresh bunch of dark leafy greens, there's no nutrition label there. And that's important and that's telling. So want you to kind of keep this in mind that once you've got a box or a bag or a container of food in hand, you already have to have your sort of spidey sense on that you're looking at a processed food in some way, shape, or form, that man has gotten involved in this production of this food, and we have to be savvy consumers. So today is going to be about how to be a savvy consumer, how to break down what's on the labels, and we do hope that this gets, interactive. I'm going to talk and kind of set the stage a little bit in the beginning by going through some different food labels and some of the different areas that are on there. But I do want you guys to kind of chime in and, suggest, your favorite food or a food that you eat frequently. If you want to tackle that food label together, just put that food or item in the chat or a link to the item in the chat. And Stacy will be able to pull that up for us as we get to a place where we can kind of just free form and have discussion and talk more about this. So as questions come up as I'm talking, put them in the chat. And if there are foods that you really you want to decipher that you still are not sure about, put those in the chat as well. And we'll hopefully have a chance to tackle that. So food labels, they look like this. They're generally not colored and pretty like this on the box. They're just usually black and white, but the colors, make it easier to kind of talk about. So all labels must include at least 7 of these components, but excuse me, there are many more components oftentimes on the label, including ingredients and allergens. So we'll tackle this kind of top to bottom. The serving size is an important part right at the top to kind of orient yourself to, because we've all picked up a package of food and looked at the food label only to realize the serving size was very, very small, right? So the serving size might be, this contains 8 servings. That's a fairly large package. And I don't know what this food is, but 2/3 of a cup is 1 serving. So if if 2/3 of a cup, you're normally eating two or three times that, you have to triple that to really look through the rest of this. And so you're not getting, if you're eating 3 servings, you're not getting 8 grams of fat, you're getting 3 times that. You're getting 24 grams of fat. So we'll go through that and break it down a little bit more as we talk through specific foods. But serving size is important because it does come, hugely into play when you're making this assessment, whether this is a good food for you, whether it's a safe food, whether it's a sort of a green, yellow, or red food. Green, I could eat this anytime, all the time, and it's really health promoting. Yellow, it's a little bit of a caution food, some red flags here and there. And a red food might be sort of an indulgence kind of food that you have on rare occasion, but really, really love.
So Paula, just a real quick, just recap there. I just want to make sure our listeners are following. So what you are saying is when we look at the serving size, we're noticing that it's 2/3 of a cup, and there's 8 of those 2/3 in this serving. But what we are going to review collectively is the label is indicative of 1 serving. Did we get that correct? I'm just making sure because I think that this is to level set everybody. It is, even though there's 8 servings, we're only talking about the nutritional value of 1 serving, which in this case is 2/3 of a cup. Kind
Right.
of confusing. Am I with you?
You got it. You
Got
got
it.
it. So everything that is listed here for this particular food is going to be based on that single serving of 2/3 of a cup, not on the whole container, not the whole package of food. So the amount of calories in 1 serving size, which again for this food is 2/3 of a cup, is 230 calories. I don't get too tangled up in calories for a lot of reasons because a calorie doesn't really tell us about the quality of the food. Um, 230 calories from fruits and vegetables are very different than 230 calories from Doritos, right? They behave differently in our body and they have different properties that are more important than just the numbers. So again, it may be of value to you if this is something that you're, used to looking at, but I don't get too tangled up in calories. I'm more interested in the quality of what kind of food we're talking about. So let's dive in to these other aspects of the food label. For doing that, instead of looking at this generic food that we really don't know what it is, it's just sort of a generic food label. We're going to dive into yogurts as an example. I feel like that's a pretty common food that a lot of people eat during the day, whether it's for a snack or for breakfast. And there's a lot to kind of understand. I think there's probably hundreds, if not more, different kinds of yogurts within each brand. I feel like, whether it's Chobani or Yoplait or Siggi's or you name it, there's you know, a handful, if not a dozen, different varieties within each brand. So it gets a little mind-boggling and understanding, I feel like, what you're eating could be really important. And so I thought this was a good food, item to start with. But again, we're not going to sort of only do yogurts. So feel free again to put stuff in the chat that you really like to talk about, either types of things or a specific item. So let's start off with this Chobani. And we're going to, I have to move bear with me. I cannot see. Okay. Cannot see the text because my video was across it. And when I'm in play mode, I can't see my cursor. So here we are. We've got Chobani Greek yogurt, whole milk, plain yogurt. So this isn't typically what's flying off the shelf in the grocery store because it's unflavored, it's full fat, and so people are generally, this isn't like the sort of grab and go food that most people are buying. But we're going to start here for a variety of reasons. So again, this is a larger container. This is not a single serve. It's 32 ounces. And 1 serving would be 3/4 of a cup of this larger container. It tells you again the calories and how many servings per container. It says about 5. So we're going to start with the fat section. So there's always a listing about the types of fats that are in the food and how much. Total fat. that gives you the overall picture of how many grams of fat are in this, again, single serving that we're talking about here, which is 3/4 of a cup. So we're going to take a little pause on this first one and really dive into some of these areas of fat, protein, and sugars to sort of go off the Chobani necessarily script and just really talk about what those things are and what it means. So we have total fat, and they're going to break that down further into saturated fat, which is a type of fat, and trans fat, which again is a type of fat. There are other types of fat that aren't listed here, but this is what is on all labels and mandated: the total fat and the saturated fat and the trans fat. So total fat is 9 grams per serving, and of that, 5 of those 9 are saturated. So the balance, we are to presume, are unsaturated fats. There are 0 grams of trans fats listed here. After I get done talking a little bit about fat, I'm gonna pause and let Stacy tell me if I've confused you all hopelessly. So let's talk a little bit about what kinds of fats and what that means. Fats can get honestly really complex and really sciencey very quickly because really we're talking about a strand of a fatty acid, how it looks on a chemical basis, and how the different atoms and things are attached to this strand. And that's what makes them saturated and unsaturated, makes them liquid or solid at room temperature. And so all of that gets really sciencey and a little bit too much. So I'm going to try to stay away from too much science and really just kind of break it down in the practical aspect of it. A lot of us look at saturated fat and immediately we have a judgment associated with that. Like that's the bad fat. I don't want that fat. And I want to just give some food for thought around that. I didn't even mean to do that, but I want to let you form your own decisions and and just be a source of information around this and let you make your own judgments around saturated fat. But I personally don't feel like saturated fats are bad fats. So saturated fat is typically solid at room temperature. And a saturated fatty acid, again, these are the strands of what these fats look like on a chemical basis. Each, single molecule has no double bonds between this long string of carbon molecules, only single bonds. And that's what makes them behave differently than an unsaturated fat. And both, in the bottle or in a container and in our bodies. An unsaturated fat has a fatty acid with at least one double bond. And within unsaturated fats, there are polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats. And I'm going to fast forward just for a little diversion here into this fat chart to give a little bit more context and a little bit more practical regular words around types of fats. This is from a fabulous book. If you really are interested in the science and understanding fats on a deeper level, there's an entire book just about fats, just to let you know how complex this topic can get. And it's by Mary Einig. I know this is probably backwards on your screen, but that she is actually a local Maryland woman who now is deceased, but she wrote this fabulous book, and she was a fat expert, a fat and lipid expert. So this gives us a little bit more of an idea. So no fat is strictly, no food source of fat is one single type of fat. They're all a mixture, including olive oil. That might blow your mind a little. So olive oil is not just monounsaturated fat. It has other types of fatty acids in there with it. So here we have saturated fats. They're generally solid at room temperature, things like cocoa butter, dairy fats, nutmeg butter. Not many people have used that. Palm tallow is from beef. And then you have things that are mostly unsaturated, which is where you put olive oil. That's the category of olive oil is in, because they're mainly oleic acid. That's the type of fatty acid. You have canola oil, chicken fat, duck fat, goose fat, lard, which is fat rendered from pork, macadamia oil, olive oil, peanut. You can read. I don't want to bore you, but you might be surprised to find those all in the same category, right? olive oil with chicken fat and duck fat. These are animal fats that I thought were kind of quote unquote bad for us. So it's just an education, a little diversion of a sampling of education around the fact that fats are a little bit more complicated than what is just on your food label, and that saturated fats by themselves, in and of themselves, are not bad or unhealthy fats. It really depends on the type of genetics you have, your other health conditions, and so on and so forth. It's really hard to say, but basically the bottom line is 200 years ago, before vegetable oil was a thing, the country was a lot healthier when they primarily ate just whole foods forms of fat, which were mainly from animals. And olive oil has been around for a long time, and that's again easy to press at home without a fancy machine, because we all know how juicy and succulent that an olive is. It's not the same thing as trying to get oil from a peanut, which takes a machine to do that. So we're gonna go back. Sorry for the
Can I jump in, Paula, for a second? Because as I'm listening to, I'm boy, some of this is I thought I knew, right? And so if I'm a little curious, I'm
yeah,
curious to know whether or not our listeners are.
yeah,
So I heard you say that our fats primarily from animal fats, and then of course something like an olive oil. And what was interesting to me is some of these other ones were following into the monosaturated category. Just to keep it super simple, my understanding is, as always, we answer the question with the answer of it depends. And the one thing I think people appreciate is the black and white of just staying away from. And so my education would say trans fat is probably where we want to put that on our red light list. And some of these other ones that I didn't think were healthier, are you saying when we evaluate the fat category that we should be, again, we're not consumed with the number of calories. What we're looking for is, I think, a broad spectrum of different kinds of fats in order for the body to be able to use those efficiently. Am I getting
yeah,
that right, or am I close,
yeah.
or no?
I wasn't quite finished. So I needed to kind of
Okay.
talk about trans fats before we kind of sum and wrap things up about
Okay,
fat.
I just was trying to get making sure that we were understanding that you are. I apologize, I didn't mean to jump in there. I just wanted to kind of categorize it a little bit because some of those, that's new to me. I mean, when you pull the chart back up later on, I'm interested because some of the ones that I didn't think were as healthy. I want to hear what you have to say. Please continue.
So, again, saturated fat is a type of fat. It's found in animal products, basically, is where, or coconut or palm oil, and coconut oil, that's where you'll find a saturated fat content, or animal products. So this is from milk from cows. So this is going to have saturated fat with it because it is a whole milk product. The fat has not been removed from the milk. And so again, whether that's good or bad for you, I have to know you on an individual level
Yeah.
to know whether that's the fat you need to eat more of or stay away from. So, but saturated fats on their face are not bad. They're not what cause heart disease. I would the next step of that is the fats you want to stay away from are trans fats, as you were alluding to. Trans fats are fats that they have been mechanically altered by man in the manufacturing process of making the fat. And some fats, there are animal product fats that have trace amounts of trans fats associated with them. But the ones we're worried about and we don't want to have in our bodies are the ones that are made by man, and they're made in a factory. They disrupt cellular function because they displace other fats in our cell membranes, and that changes how our cell actually works and functions. Trans fats raise your bad cholesterol, your LDL levels. They lower your good cholesterol, HDL levels. And eating trans fats increases your risk of developing heart disease and stroke. It's also associated with developing type 2 diabetes. It also affects your immune response because it lowers your B and T cell function. So trans fats that we want to stay away from are mainly found in fried foods like donuts, baked goods, cakes, pie crust, biscuits, pizza, cookies, that kind of things, especially margarines. Again, margarine is a man-made product. It doesn't exist in nature, and it's full of trans fats. So those are the fats you want to really be cautious about. And the other types of fats that you want to be cautious about are vegetable oils that are not going to be broken down on this nutrition label per se. So we'll see if we have time to go into that at the end.
Yeah, I think that that was excellent. So just to make sure that we do have enough time for you to go down the list, just to boil it to a simple kind of teaching point. We want to make sure somebody like you, if we're trying to decide on fats, all of the fats besides trans fat fit into the category of it depends. And we really want to know the person, right? And the ones that our listeners and you and I and everybody else, the red light or the caution is the trans fat arena. And the way I like to describe that is it's typically your shelf stable products, not always, but your shelf stable product, cookies, candies, ice cream, things that man has altered. And we want to make sure that if nothing else, we leave today here knowing just tackle trans fats. Trans fat, of course, everybody I'm sure who's not speaking up, like, you mean the stuff that we love and taste good? Yes, that's what we mean. So if nothing else, I like to say don't overhaul everything. This is an area that anybody could benefit from reducing substantially. Do I have it?
Yes,
Good,
yes, that's
good,
great. And
good.
our next piece is kind of a subset of fat in a way, because cholesterol, again, cholesterol, we all have this negative reaction to cholesterol. We've been taught, if you're, I'm in my 50s, if you're, my age or older, you've been taught that cholesterol's the bad guy in our bodies, right? Cholesterol, that's not true. We need cholesterol, and our body actually makes the majority of our cholesterol each and every day because we couldn't possibly eat enough food that has cholesterol to meet our body's need for it. So, again, according to Mary Einig, who wrote that great book on fats, it's impossible to eat enough cholesterol containing food to supply your body with the amount of cholesterol it needs on a daily basis. So let that soak into your brain for a second while I tell you a little bit more about cholesterol. Cholesterol is a precursor to our hormones, our sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone, as well as our steroid hormones that are our stress hormones like cortisol, cortisone, and vitamin D. Cholesterol is sort of the backbone before all of these other things can be made. It's an important part, a critical part of our cell membranes. Cholesterol actually acts as a vital antioxidant in our body and is needed to make the bile acids which help us break down our fats. So again, expand your mind a little bit. Know that cholesterol is not a bad guy. Cholesterol in the body has a really good purpose. Our bodies are designed with incredible wisdom, and our body would not be making so much cholesterol if this was a bad thing for us. Now, again, there can be high cholesterol foods that are very heavily manufactured and processed that might be not the best choice for us. So it's more about what food is this coming from? What's the food source of this cholesterol? And where is it coming from? And again, knowing your own personal needs and balancing that with your, genetics and working with your doctor about your own cholesterol needs. But a little caution with that too, because doctors are trained that from a medical perspective that, their cholesterol is to be medicated when it's a certain point in the body, et cetera. That goes down a long rabbit hole. So we're not going to go down that.
So,
But
so if trans fat on the label, we're shooting for zero, is there, and I don't even know if this is an appropriate question, if cholesterol is at 35 milligrams, we know it's coming from an animal source, it's 12%. Is there a number that if we're watching that number and we know the source, is there a number that is a recommended daily amount for cholesterol, or is it just that we are watching the source and the answer of it depends on who we're talking about?
yeah, I mean, I would more so worry about the nature of the food you're eating, making
Okay.
sure it's more of a whole food, and I don't really count milligrams of cholesterol. sort of brackets around that, like don't eat a food that has more than X amount of cholesterol. But here on this other side of the column, you have percentage of its daily value. So this is based
Yep.
on a 2000 calorie diet of the average generic person that doesn't really exist. So they are saying that of your total 2000 calorie diet, this is only 12%. So a pretty small percent of your overall
Okay.
daily intake. So I think that using that, maybe that percentage number here is helpful to kind of give some sense of that. But yeah, so again, fats can be a little bit confusing and we spend
They
a lot
are.
of time on
They
it.
really are. So let's pause you here and make sure of for our Believe Big listeners today, that was a big, big download of fat. And like I said, I'm going to say it a couple times as Paula continues to speak. If this is a topic of interest of you personally, of course, we will connect you to Paula directly. But again, we're trying to take away what are the takeaways. And so if you have a quick question about fat before we move to sodium, please feel free to come off of mute and ask directly, Paula directly, and or you can put it in the chat and I'll ask her for you. Again, we can circle back if we have enough time at the end. I feel like we tackled a big one because what we didn't talk about was the percentage of calories as it relates to total fat. And we, like I said, this is a huge subject. Good news is Paula's coming back in a couple of months. So let's just get through
Yeah.
the bigger label, and then we can kind of take it from there. And I am happy, and I know Paula, since we like to be together, that would be happy to come back to this for another episode because I'm learning too. And so don't be afraid to put out there what you don't know because information is awareness and awareness is empowerment. And the more you know, the better decisions that you can make for your own healing journey or that of your loved one, right?
Yeah.
Questions for me? I'll just give it a second and then let Paula jump into sodium, which I'm hoping is a little easier. My goodness, who knew?
I know.
All right, take it away. We have no questions on my side. Feel free
Okay.
to jump into sodium.
Right. So, the sodium content, again, of the food is relative to the type of sodium. Is it naturally part of the food? Has it been added by man? And if it's been added by man to enhance flavor and taste, I would assume that it's sort of your traditional table salt version, not a high quality natural salt. And that's where, again, the distinction of the quality of the sodium comes into play for me. So, in general, the American Heart Association recommends that we have no more than 2,300 milligrams per day, and ideally somewhere around that 1,500 milligram per day amount versus the 2,300. So there are different categories on. You might also see listed on a package like salt or sodium free. That means it has less than 5 milligrams of salt, or a very low sodium food has 35 milligrams of sodium or less. Low sodium is 140 grams. So based on those designations, this food is a low sodium food. It has less than 140 milligrams per serving. There are other designations around sodium as well, but again, they're all geared toward that maximum of 2,300 milligrams per day. And um, the type salt, again, kind of like fat, is not in and of itself what's dangerous for us. Some people are salt and sodium sensitive, but natural salts are very different in composition and they behave very differently in our bodies than a bleached and iodized table salt that you might have in a restaurant or maybe in your homes. So I'd encourage you to switch to a more natural type of salt, knowing, of course, that that does not have a necessary component in it, which it's iodine. It's not iodized like table salt is, and you can get your iodine through a natural source like seaweed. There are seaweed flakes. You can get seaweed snacks in stores and such. But seaweed is a natural source of iodine, as well as other seafood sources. Shrimp and other seafood is naturally rich in iodine. Things from the sea. You're getting the picture, right?
Oh,
So
wow. I just made that connection.
things from the sea, yes. So, yes, if you switch to using a natural salt in your home, which would be like a Celtic salt, a Redmond's real salt, a Himalayan salt. Those things have not been processed, and they have a lot of trace minerals and nutrients associated with them. They behave again differently in the body than a man-made salt that's been chemically changed and altered and sort of messed with. So again, this is the sodium content of this is not alarming in any way. It's 3% of your overall daily intake, nothing to really kind of worry about. But again, I don't know if that sodium has been added or it's naturally part of the food. But we can maybe see that on the ingredients. Oops. I can't see the ingredients because my camera's around across it. Anyway, we're gonna never get through all of this if I keep talking as long as I am. So
Let's do the takeaway. The takeaway here is if you use, and not to pick on our friends at Morton, but if your salt is super white, that's probably a bleach salt. That's Paula's recommending that we consider moving over to a more natural salt, like a Himalayan sea salt or a Celtic salt. And that on this label, it looks like a very low amount, but yet we don't know where it's coming from. So important to know the derivative of salt. And again, if you are salt sensitive, those numbers will be in the playback notes. We're shooting for no more than, I think, 2,300 milligrams of salt per day. And then the sliding scale goes down from that. I do know, I think that's like less than 2 tablespoons or 2 teaspoons is that amount. So buyer beware on that one. That one's something to pay attention to. And I agree, we're never going to get through all of this awesome. I feel like this is going to be a part 2, Paula. I
yeah.
do. Keep going.
So sodium, just as a final wrap up, again, the foods that you're going to pick up that are in a package that have very high sodium, like maybe a frozen pizza or something of that nature, or maybe like a frozen Chinese food kind of meal or that kind of thing. That's where you're going to see the really high sodium intakes, and that's where you don't have control over what kind of sodium has been added, what kind of salt has been used there. So this is again why we want to like pay attention to sodium and look at that. And this minimal amount of sodium isn't making a big deal or in a dent in your overall intake and a big issue in life and your overall diet. But those high sodium foods that are more processed and more packaged and made for that really palatable moment are going to be much higher, and that's where you want to pay attention. So the next category is carbohydrates, and we're going to spend a good bit of time here because again, this is sort of another really big sticky area that is confusing. Total carbohydrates. Carbohydrates here are 7 grams. Again, dairy has some natural sugars associated with it, which you see here below listed as total sugars of 6. 0 added sugars, meaning again, there's nothing added to that food to make it sweeter. It just naturally contains the lactose, which is the natural sugars in milk, in cow milk. And so total sugars are 6. You can see in the ingredients list, the only ingredient is cultured milk. So total carbohydrates are 7 grams. There's about little less than 1 gram of fiber, so some negligent trace amount of fiber. Total sugars is 6. That means that the natural sugars in the product are 6 grams. If there were added sugars, which we'll get to in a moment, different types of yogurts, this is where it really can start to add up. You can get several teaspoons of sugar in one very tiny little package of yogurt. So that all falls under carbohydrates. And you want a high fiber diet. So this isn't a high fiber food because, again, milk doesn't have fiber. It maybe have some trace amounts. But in general, when you're holding a package, you'd want that to say a high number. Dietary fiber is great for us. It feeds the good bugs in our gut. It helps our immune system be strong. It helps us to eliminate in the bathroom easily and does a whole lot of good things for our bodies. We used to eat upwards of, our ancestors used to eat upwards of 50 to 100 grams of fiber a day because they ate mostly whole foods. And now we are a much more fast food, convenient food society, and our fiber intake has plummeted, and so has our health. So The average, amount people get maybe these days is like 15 to 20 grams of fiber a day. You want to aim for 30 to 50 grams a day. Again, I don't think you can get too much fiber. Maybe somebody with a specific medical condition would have to worry about that, but generally speaking, more fiber is better and good for you. This is just not a natural high fiber food, so I wouldn't expect it to have a high number there. Um, the sugars, hopefully that made sense for everybody. Total sugars are 6, no added sugars. That's where you really want to look, is where has this product been altered? And that'll tell you right there in the added sugars. And we're going to look at that. I'm going to actually move to the next slide so that we can look at that here in this Chobani strawberry yogurt.
Oh,
We can go
that's
back.
good, Paula. That really kind of drives it home too, because if you said that we want to aim for no added sugars, that kind of took it way up, right?
Yes. So the total sugars now you can see are 14 in this serving size, and it includes 9 grams of added sugars. So 4 grams is a teaspoon. So this has 2 teaspoons plus a little bit more of added sugars in addition to the natural sugars in the milk.
Wow.
So just so you know, this little tiny container, if you were to sit down and eat it, would you ever naturally add 2 teaspoons of sugar to this container? But it's been added for you, so it doesn't feel like it's that high in sugar. So especially stuff we haven't done ourselves, it's easy to kind of disconnect from. But you can see it listed here in the ingredients list is very different. The other ingredient list was just milk. This is milk, strawberries, cane sugar, water, fruit pectin, which again is giving a little bit of thickness and viscosity to it, and part of probably that strawberry jam kind of consistency. Natural flavors, who knows what that is. Guar gum, locust bean gum, again, those things are thickeners. And fruit and vegetable juice concentrate to give it color, and lemon juice concentrate for kind of brightness. And so you want to kind of corroborate what you see there on that listing of numbers with the ingredients list. And the first ingredient is the most in representative of the volume. So it goes from highest volume to lowest volume in terms of the ingredients. So the biggest ingredient in this yogurt is milk, non-fat milk. The next biggest ingredient in terms of volume of ingredient is strawberries, then cane sugar. So you also have to understand there are a lot of different names for sugar here. They're being very forthright and calling it cane sugar. A lot of foods, you will have 5 or more different types of sugar in a label, and they will be called by different names. And I'm going to just skip ahead to that. So you can see,
Isn't that amazing? Oh my goodness. So for our listeners, what she's showing you is all the different ways that the marketing has gotten really clever to showcase sugar so you don't feel like it's just the one thing of sugar. So some of these things that wouldn't you wouldn't look at it and say, "Oh my goodness, that's sugar." But the rule of thumb, if it's an OSE, you can pretty much assume, right? And some of these other ones they're not intuitive, I don't think.
right.
Paula,
A lot.
is there ever a time that on that category on the label where it says added sugar, should we be aiming, whoever we are and whatever journey we're on, should we be aiming for 0? Is that the goal, kind of like trans fat? Should we put down or try to put down things that have anything related to added sugar? Because I'm thinking now, and when I go into my cupboard, my goodness, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of things that have added sugar.
Right, there are. And the goal is for everyone in life to not be adding sugars to foods and be eating things that are naturally sweet for that sweetness because they have, again, fruits have plenty of their own sugar naturally in there, fructose. And again, not to overdo the fruit, but this is an area in particular that people with cancer need to really be aware and heightened around, at least in my practice. You don't want added sugars. There are some alternative sweeteners like monk fruit and stevia that can really help with giving you the sweet taste without the downsides of the intake of sugar, of especially cane sugar. These are some general recommendations around intake of sugar, but it's ideally, like Stacey said, you want to avoid added sugars if you can.
That's good. That's really good. So far, friends, we're going to try as best as we can to stay away from trans fat. We're going to look at that number. We're going to also look at our total sugars, not that each of those line items aren't important. I think it's been incredible trying to really kind of break down, but I like really solid takeaways and action items on the immediate. I think getting those numbers down is a really good thing. As we continue on, I'm going to make sure that carbohydrates, I'm just kind of keeping us on track for time. Is there anything else that we want to know on the immediate about carbs? We want lots of fiber. We want no added sugars if possible. And we also want to understand where our sugar is coming from. What I heard you say is the first slide with the Greek yogurt that's non-fat or that's plain. One way that we could add our sweet is to add whole fruit that's organic. That would be the easiest translation that we can give you right now. But did I miss anything on carbs, Paula?
No, that's a great place on carbs. I think the next thing we need to tackle is protein. You could see just between these two options, the whole milk plain yogurt, which is only just cultured milk, versus the Chobani strawberry Greek yogurt. There's a difference in protein. So there might also be a difference in serving size. So this is 5.3 ounces. That is in grams. I have no idea how that compares. A cup might actually be a little bit more than this little small. It might be similar, but they're not that far apart. So the bottom line is some of this other stuff is taking up the room for protein here because we know we have strawberries and sugar and different things added here to the yogurt itself. So of course it's going to be a little bit lower in protein. So protein of 11 grams here in this little container, and that's a decent amount. So you want to look, you want to aim for about 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. In general, there's a lot of guidelines around how much protein do you need, and there are so many different situations, person to person, what age the person is, what their health status is, are they pre or post surgery, are they pre or post treatment or in the process of treatment. So protein needs can really, really vary from person to person. So it's very hard for me to say. But in general, to make a pretty well-balanced meal, you want to have at least 20 to 30 grams of protein in a meal. So again, this would be a lovely snack. It's not quite a meal in my mind. It's 11 grams of protein. I would, to zhuzh this up and get a little more protein in there, I would add some nuts and seeds to kind of round that out and give yourself that protein boost to make it a full package, a full meal.
And the
Um,
good fats, right?
what's that? And good
And the
fats,
good
right?
fats.
Because again, that was my next point on this one. So this strawberry yogurt, that's more of that grab and go kind of yogurt that you might have in your fridge, has no fat. The fat's been removed. It's cultured non-fat milk. So the fat's been removed, so it has no fat. And again, for me, a well-balanced meal has fat, healthy fats, protein, and by virtue of, again, most foods have some carbohydrate content, but fiber would be great. This isn't, again, the type of food that's going to have fiber, so that's not a big concern here. But you at least want two of those three things. So here it's no fat. So I would want to add some fats through healthy fats through nuts and seeds. And protein, it's a little low in protein for a standalone meal. So adding some nuts and seeds will help with that. You can also add a little protein powder to it to, again, boost it up a little bit. So again, there's different ways to kind of tinker with that, but protein is really important. It's how we build muscle, bone, hair, connective tissue, skin. And it's also a huge part of our immune system. We need protein to make antibodies and enzymes and all sorts of other things. So we need protein.
Fabulous. Fabulous. My goodness. So much.
We're going to keep diving in because I want to really sort of unpack these find differences and really be able to empower people to compare and contrast. Like these are all yogurts, and look how different they are on paper and how different they might be in your body and feel as a food. So we've got a lower sugar Chobani. And I just stuck with the same brand because it's just a great way to kind of highlight all the varieties that there are out there. So this has a reduced fat milk as the base. So you have, again, a lower fat, but some fat content, lower cholesterol, sodium is about the same. We have total sugars of 9, and it's lower added sugars than their other. So the other added sugars here were 9 grams of added sugars. This is only 5 grams of added sugars for a total of 9 grams. So again, the total is including naturally occurring sugars of lactose, and then the added sugars is just the sugar they added, which is the cane sugar on that ingredient list. Protein, this is 12 grams for this small container. The other was 11, and the other was 15 for a serving. So you can see that there's different associations of the breakdown of these things are going to maybe feel and behave differently in your body. And there's a 0 sugar to contrast that with. This has a longer list of ingredients. Also beware of that. The more ingredients you get, the longer that list gets, the more your spidey sense should go up, because more ingredients is not always better.
Wow.
And so we have again an non-fat milk as the base. So there's no fat in this at all. It's been removed. Sodium is a little higher. Again, sodium helps to give flavor. It helps to balance sugar as well, or the sweet taste. So you usually need them you need that push-pull. You need them like in like seesaw balance to make the food taste good. So sodium is a little bit higher here. Total carbs are 6, which is lower than the other carbs because they have, it looks like they have removed the lactose. It's lactose free. And so they've removed that natural sugar there, and they haven't added any sugars, but it's still sweet. And we'll get into that in a second. But the protein is pretty good. It's 13 grams. It's a little bit higher than this one and this one. So it's a little bit higher in protein.
All right. Well, Paula, let me stop you 1 second. We have about 3 more minutes of chit chat and just enough time to ask any questions. So I just want to keep us on track to make sure
Okay.
that we end on time. So before we go any further, I want to make sure at this point, if you are considering asking Paula a question, now is your time to get it in there, because I'm going to let her finish her thought. And like I said, I want to leave enough space, like we said, for the interaction, because I feel like, and I don't know about you, Paula, but this may have to have a part 2. It's so good. Anybody else geeking out on this stuff like I am? I mean, I am learning so much more than I thought I knew. So again, if you have questions, now would be the time to start loading them up. I'll zip it and let Paula finish up, and then we'll leave enough space to ask the questions.
Right. And if you have foods you want us to go through a label, please let us know. We would love to do a little live, let's unpack it together.
A hot seat for Paula. Hot
Yeah.
seat label decoding. I would love that. Can we do it
Yeah.
anyway?
So you guys give us some foods you really want to examine. But this food, as I mentioned, has no sugar, but it is still sweet. And we've got here you can kind of see allulose is a sweetener. That's a natural sweetener. That is an okay and acceptable way of sweetening food. You've also got stevia leaf. That's another type of sweetener. You could already see this is a sweet product. And there's a third sweetener, monk fruit. So this has 3 types of sweeteners. They are not sugar. They're not going to raise your blood sugars. So they're not glycemic, and they're not in that sugar category. So they don't have to be listed here as sugars because they, again, don't contribute to that carbohydrate intake. But there's plenty of sweet in this food, I can tell you that, because there are 3 different types of alternative sweeteners here. So last one we're going to look at is this Chobani high protein. So this says it has 0 added sugar because, again, it has other things added to it. It has The stevia, yeah, it only has
And
one.
that's decent, right? We said that that was a
Stevia is
naturally,
okay. That
it's okay.
again, you know, the stevia is a green plant that kind of resembles parsley when it's growing. The stevia you might be used to using looks a lot like a regular table sugar. That's a very highly processed food and not quite the stevia we would say we want you to be eating, but we don't know what the stevia looks like. My guess is it probably looks like the table sugar version. So again, the quality you lose control over the quality of the individual ingredients when you're eating a food that's been put together for you. So um,
Mm.
we don't really know here. The protein is higher. And what I found was really interesting is I could not figure out why this protein level was higher. They say on the website that it's higher due to the processing of how Greek yogurt is made.
Hmm.
However, if you look, each one of these say they're Greek yogurt. Maybe not that one,
Uh,
that one. They're all Greek yogurt, except for this one doesn't say it's Greek yogurt. So I don't know what's different about how they've processed this particular milk to make it so high in protein. I could not drill down. So if anybody knows, please educate me because I would love to understand that.
wow. Paula, my goodness. Like I said, this is like generated. What was the term you used? Put your Spidey hat on?
Yeah, your Spidey sense.
I think that again, not seeing any questions in our chat, but I am going to speak with you away from this. And I really do think a hot seat and letting our listeners come back in. I feel like I'm afraid of yogurt now a little bit. I'm teasing, but I am really very grateful for a couple of things. My biggest, like not going deeper in the nuances is really paying attention to individual needs and then no trans fat as much as possible. In the carbs, really pay attention to as much as possible, no added sugars. And
Right.
then I loved what you said, which is reframing it. Go ahead and look at that protein. What Paula did was frame out the three macronutrients. And again, I hate to say it, but the word is going to be depends, especially if we are on the cancering journey, that we really want to work with somebody who's qualified, who understands our customizable needs on the journey to explore healing at its highest level, right? But there are some things, again, for all of us. And that protein, I'm going to leave here again reinforced about 20 to 30 grams of protein each time you sit down to eat, and reminding myself that it's the sourcing of the protein, making sure that it's coming from a really great place. So I'm going to kind of bring us to an end. We're going to stay on time. Um, if there is additional questions, which it looks like there's Sharon has one. She says, I'm always confused about oils. Brown berry organic thin sliced 22 whole grains and seeds, 1 gram of whole grains, 4 grams of protein, non-GMO, plant-based. It has soybean oil and or sunflower canola oil. Paula, if you think that you can finish an answer, Sharon, before our time is over, please feel free. And if not, Sharon, we will make sure that you get that answer offline. I do want to save a moment because I do have something I want to pray up for all of us and make sure that we end appropriately.
Yeah, okay. So, Sharon, I'm going to try to answer this real quick for you. Oils. Yes, you're right to have your spidey sense up about oils. So I assume this is a bread, brownberry organic thin sliced bread, 22 whole grains. We love that it says whole grains. We love that. We love that it's organic. Important things because wheat, especially, is a very, very heavily sprayed grain, and a lot of them are. 1 gram whole grains, 4 grams of protein. I don't know, again, the serving size. I don't know if it's 1 or 2 slices. Non-GMO plant-based has soybean oil and or sunflower canola. Those all raise my spidey sense. Sunflower, canola, and soybean oil are all vegetable oils that fall in the category of fats that are easily damaged, both in the processing, the creation of that oil, and in the use of it beyond that. And so we just don't have enough time to get into the why about those fats being dangerous, but I would shy away from vegetable oils like corn, sunflower, safflower, soy, canola oil. Those are to me caution foods. If you can get rid of vegetable oils and added sugars in your life, you will transform your health. So I'll leave it on that.
That's awesome. That's a really great place to put a period. Again, I am going to consider and really strongly hug on Paula to maybe revisit this topic again. If there are other questions that you have about this in particular session, feel free to reach out at stacy@believebig.org. I will give you Paula's direct access. She is there for anybody who needs extra help. I can absolutely, hands down, prayer hands up, just one of the best. And I did want to take a moment. My one word intention this year is listen, but it is also about listening to God's voice a little stronger. So I want to end today's session by saying praise to our Heavenly Father for not only wrapping his arms around Paula to be able to share such an amazing, important message, but also to all of you for leaning into this conversation and taking control over the things that we have control over. Sometimes things happen that we don't have control over, but what we put in our mouth, we certainly do. And I want to say Happy New Year and thank you to my pal, Paula, because every time with her is a great time for information and community. And that's it. Like I said, I look forward to seeing you all in February. Paula and I will talk more offline. If there is something that we did not touch on, I know it was a lot, but just know that our service is to you all. And if it means revisiting this, we will see her again in a couple of months. So if you can hang tight for that, but if there's pressing, please don't hesitate. Stacy@believebig.org. We love you all very much. We wish you tremendous healing and thanks for spending the hour with us.
Thank you all so much for joining.
Paula,
Yes.
you guys take care. See you next time.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.